Hey guys, I'm Andrews with Atom Audio, and today we're going to talk about the first 10 pieces of gear that you need to start a studio. So today we are joined by Andrew Masters, who not only runs an awesome home studio here, but has a fantastic educational YouTube channel that you can check out in the description below. Andrew, can you kind of give a rundown of how this came to be and what iteration of the studio we're on?
Yeah, learned from a lot of mistakes over the past 10 years. I've sort of always recorded at home, since I was a kid, and lived in LA working in commercial studios, and I always had some sort of setup in my apartment. And we bought this house about 7 months ago, and this was the first time that I really, personally, financially invested in my studio space where I could really do everything that I needed. I did a video where I sort of showed how I built it. I did it in about 7 days, which was insane, but this is my business, so I have no studio, no money, so.
I had no idea you did it that fast.
Yeah, I
figured it took you like a month to build this thing.
No, it was stupid, man. I spent all my time here doing this. We also had contractors renovating the inside of the house, so I was trying to beat them. Mm-hmm. And it was hilarious because I learned everything, like the flooring, lighting, electrical, everything from YouTube videos. And the contractors were even making fun of me as they watched me doing electrical work, staring at my phone, watching a video, and they're like, "What? How did you learn to YouTube?" It's pretty awesome. But it turned out really well, and it's been a huge blessing for my business and the results that you can get at home now. Doing it yourself is certainly much more cost effective, but sucks to do. So it was a fun experience. I'm definitely going to be paying other people to do it next time around, but yeah, it's been really great, and I'm super happy with it.
Yeah. So like I said, we're going to be talking about the first 10 pieces of gear that you need to start a studio. And, for a lot of people, it's going to vary after you get past a certain point, whether you're making beats in your bedroom, whether you're working at East West, or, whatever it might be. But we've tried to kind of boil this down to the, bare bones basics of 10 pieces of gear that you will for sure need in a studio no matter what. The first piece of gear that we have is a computer, obviously.
That's right.
The brains of the studio. Could you kind of speak to your investment in a computer and why it's important?
Sure. First, I'll say I think now is a better time than ever to buy a computer to record music, because the prices have gone, dramatically down for what you can get inside the computer. And whether you're PC or Mac, I think you can get what you need reasonably affordable. But for me personally, I do all of my business and work, music and video on my computer, and it's always on. So I bought a 2018 version of this, and it's been great. I actually had never used a Mac Mini before I bought it. I started on an iMac in 2007, and then I bought a used MacBook Pro from my boss in LA, and used that until a year ago, a 2010 version. So I think you can get a MacBook, and that'll basically cover what you need. If you're doing really processing intensive, like you're scoring movies or something like that, then it might be worth, investing a little more in whatever the desktop version,
the $10,000 desktop version.
Yeah, whatever you think you need. But I figured, I went through the school of maybe I'll build a PC and do a Hackintosh. But I started thinking about my lack of knowledge and how I would wind up in a session if something went wrong mid vocals, and I'm like, oh, hold on, let me go look this up on a Hackintosh forum and try to solve this while you're standing here. So I just went with a Mac Mini, and the 2018 version actually allows you to take it apart and upgrade the RAM. So Hack, if you want to buy that, if they're still offering it, it's much cheaper to buy the lowest RAM that they offer, which in that circumstance I think was 8 gigs, and then just go to Amazon or wherever and replace it with, I got 32 gigs. You can do an insane amount now. Outside of that, I got 1 terabyte of solid state storage in the computer, and I just tried to keep as little on my computer as possible and keep all of my sound libraries and drum sounds and any extra files or sessions or backups that I don't need on my computer off of my computer. And that just keeps like the wheel turning a little easier. And that way, when you're in the middle of a session, you're much less likely to get errors or slowed down by your computer basically being exhausted because there's too much going on it. In addition to how you manage your computer, you can really get a great whatever pertains to your workflow very affordably now. And for me, that just happens to be the Mac Mini.
Again, this is going to vary depending on what you are doing, whether you're recording drums or just vocals. We have a couple of examples here. We have the basic Scarlett 2i2.
Yep.
If
Great
you need
interface.
if you need to go a little bigger, recording drums, we've got the 18i20.
Oh, yeah.
And I know you've done a shootout between the 18i20 and your Apollo gear.
Yep.
That people can check out as well. It's a great video. What was your process like when you were looking to, get an interface and all the considerations you were looking at?
This answer would depend on the viewer or me or you. Like, we all do different things. So I spend a lot of my time, again, recording audio with microphones. So I'm looking for mic pre's, a lot of mic pre's and a lot of inputs. If you're doing tracks and you're mostly just overdubbing vocals or an acoustic or maybe like stereo keys in or something like that, you can very easily just roll with a 2 input or 2 mic pre interface and you'll get everything that you need. And especially if you can get creative in the box or in your software or whatever. Like, I do everything from home, so I'm 100% convinced like you can really make something incredible with almost anything.
Yeah.
Just like the computers, there's so many options that like there's never been a better time. If you're on a budget, you've got options. If you want to spend some dough, there's plenty of fun options as well. The Apollo X's are definitely more expensive, but equally fun. You can do a lot of different sort of processing with their software and stuff, which is pretty exciting. But whatever works out for, the setup that you have, I think that's probably the most important thing to consider is, what am I doing in this studio and what do I actually need versus like what would look really cool and what would be really fun to have. Because as engineers and producers, that's typically where we operate. It's like, I want that thing, but maybe cool. I don't like need that thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Number 3, we have a microphone. And again, this is something that you might be thinking, I don't need that. I'm making beats in the bedroom. But I think myself personally, having done a lot of bedroom production, it's always good to have a microphone there for, if you want to start live streaming or whatever it might be, just have a solid microphone. So we went with the SM7, which I know you have and you absolutely love.
Yes.
And why is this a great microphone choice for you?
Several reasons. First off, to your point as to, well, maybe you're making beats and you don't need one. You're going to have to drop your producer tag on the beat.
True.
So you're going to have a good mic to drop that tag on there. Yeah. That's crucial to getting credits. What's the dude? Another one, right?
Yeah, Nisha Khaled.
So the SM7, it's kind of a love-hate thing. I love it because it's almost always perfect. And I also hate it because it's almost always perfect. Different mics sort of bring different colors to the sound and different characteristics and qualities, which is like very important when building something that, you're completely consuming your ears with. And the SM7 for me, it's like, one, it's durable, it's timeless. This is the old one. I think it's from, I'm not even going to pretend to know when it's from. It's old, and they're affordable. I think it's $350, $400, like that, something like that. And this one, time and time again, just keeps coming back as like, male vocals, female vocals. You can get a couple of them, depending on which. I know this is the SM7. That's the SM7B. I think there might be some difference in output level, maybe, or there's definitely something going on because mine needs a little more juice from the cloud lift, but always sits right in the mix. And not only for the vocals, but this thing, I use it on acoustic guitar, like a lot of different styles of acoustic guitars. I use it on drums. Sounds good on a kick drum. Sounds good on a snare drum. I use it on hi-hats. It sounds amazing on hi-hats. I'm not kidding.
Literally goes everywhere.
Yeah, you can put it almost on anything. It's like the SM57 is sort of like you can use it on anything, but this is really, you can use it on anything, and it's going to sound really good.
So next on the list for number 4, we are to the most important part, studio monitors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we're not just saying that because we're a studio monitor company, but there is, significant importance in having studio monitors in your studio so you can kind of hear what it's going to sound like outside of your space, ideally in the most accurate way possible. So how has the journey been for you in relation to studio monitors, and where did you start and where are you now?
Starting off, I just used whatever. I had, old stereo speakers that I would use, and at that point you're just trying to hear the sound. But what I think is the most important consideration is, what are you familiar with? Like finding a speaker that you can listen to, that you will be familiar with everything, finding a good speaker that is comfortable, that you can listen to for a long period of time and not be deaf after, and not be fatigued. That is for me the most important thing, because I do everything through my studio monitors, and I not only need to not be deaf at the end of the day, but I need to know what I'm hearing is going to translate when I leave these speakers and I go listen on, my mom's speakers or my car speakers or my friend's speakers or whatever. So I use the Adams, and I love these. These are by far my favorites. I had Focal Alpha 66s before these, and those were good too. These speakers are very rich but not misleading, which is rare. I've worked in a lot of commercial studios that have excellent, very expensive studio monitors, and you work on them, you're like, wow, it sounds so good, and then you leave and you're like, wow, this doesn't sound the same. And so it all depends what you're doing. If you're making beats, you don't listen to S10s all day. If you're tracking, if you're mixing, for me, what I consider is I want something that I can listen to all day, that's not going to make me not want to listen to things anymore, and that I can trust isn't misleading me.
So for number 5, we are to headphones. We have the Atom Audio SP5s here. We don't really expect these to be anybody's first pair of headphones, but if you could kind of talk to the importance of having a solid set of headphones in your studio as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're recording somebody else and you're at the computer, they're going to need headphones, and you should have headphones so you can hear what they are hearing, and vice versa. And whatever you wind up going with, there's a million different options out there. I would almost say the same thing. It's very to taste. I personally don't do a lot in headphones. Actually, I kind of am not a big headphone person. I think I used to have gauges in my ear when I was in audio school, and when I would put the headphones on, they would push into my jaw and give me migraine. So I think I developed some sort of I don't need headphones. So I strictly just use headphones when I'm tracking vocals or acoustic guitar or something with a microphone. But otherwise, I really always defer to my listening spot. That is where I can make my critical decisions. But as far as functionally being able to track drums, you can't track drums with the speakers, banging. So if you are a big headphones mixing kind of guy, there's sort of a wormhole I think you can go down. I know Andrew Sheps, I think, mixes on headphones. Yeah. There's closed back headphones and open back headphones. I personally don't care. I want, essentially what I'm thinking about is, if I'm tracking drums, are the mics going to hear the click banging in my ear? Because I have that click so loud, and I don't want them to hear that. So it's can I use these headphones and not hear the click? Very basic stuff. But if you're just starting out, these, you might not be thinking about that. So that's what I would consider. I always go with the closed backed headphones, and just I have a very large head, an extremely oversized head, and I need something that can fit over my massive melon. And then maybe have a second pair for whoever's performing.
Yeah, and their massive melon.
Yeah.
So number 6, again, a not super exciting topic, but we have the topic of hard drives.
Speak
in
for
the
yourself.
Studio, which might get some people excited.
Yeah.
But it's an extremely important thing to consider, the kind that you get to work off of versus the kind you store things on, and vice versa. So if you could speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so when you're starting off, I'd strongly recommend get some sort of separate hard drive from your computer, because you just never know. Like, life is funny and it doesn't care about your plan. So you need to have a backup drive to back some stuff up to at the very least. And then if you want to get into sort of the weeds of like having a really smooth workflow, I also think, like I said earlier with the computers, having a dedicated drive for storing things that you don't need on your computer at all time. I think if I was doing it right and you are actually investing and you want to splurge a little bit, I think going with like a RAID system is probably the smartest and most efficient way to go about it. But
and what does that mean exactly? For people that
honestly, I kind of don't really get it myself, which is why I've stayed away from it personally. But yeah. I think it sort of is always backing up, and there's like one or two dedicated sort of like mirror drives that are like just sort of taking backups routinely. Mm-hmm. And from what I understand, that's sort of it's doing a lot of the work for you, so you don't have to worry about it. The system I do is like I'll have an external drive that I work off of, so I'll have active projects on that drive that are not on my computer. So again, my computer can run a little bit more smoothly. And then I'll have my sound library hard drive. And hard drives now, the cost of them just keeps going down. It's so crazy how affordable you can get like a huge amount of storage. Whatever you get, if you're just starting, like get something. The solid state drive basically just runs faster. It runs more smoothly, and it's less prone to die because there's not a spinning disk inside of it. I'm not sure if it's using flash memory or what I think there might be a distinction between flash and SSD. Again, not a genius here, but those are going to be a little bit more optimized, faster transfers, and are going to be a lot less likely to die than a big bulky hard disk drive. But lots of options out there, so whatever fits your budget, but definitely recommend getting a external hard drive of some sort. Smash like for hard drives.
For number 7, it's kind of an obvious one, but you need a DAW.
Yes.
Digital audio workstation, for those who don't know. So what are the considerations that you have thought of when you're choosing, now you use Luna, but everything leading up to this point?
If I was just starting, again, I would ask myself, what am I doing? I started on Pro Tools 7 for like a month because somebody lent me an old Digio 2, which was just a time and a place that I'll never forget. But then I had to return that, so then I lost Pro Tools. So I got a version of Logic 8 at the time, and I used Logic forever. Even through when I worked at East West, I still did a lot of projects at home on Logic because it's a really great user experience, and it comes with a lot of different sounds and loops and virtual instruments, and it's very easy to just load up a template and have all different sort of instruments to choose from. Just start creating and not really think about like, create a track and like all sort of the annoying details that you have to do with a lot of other programs. But then there's, I know guys who are wizards with programs like Ableton and Fruity Loops, Studio One, different, there's too many out there. Pro Tools is, you will more often than not find that in commercial studios. A lot of scoring guys using it. I also know there's a Reaper. I know some scoring guys who use Reaper. I haven't used most of these. I've used Logic, Pro Tools, and I'm now using Luna. I used Studio One for a little bit. They all do the same thing at the end of the day. I think as far as like if you're really in the weeds with like doing programming and doing drum sort of loops and stuff like that, Ableton and now the new version of Logic, I think they sort of took from that arranging style. So if you're getting into production as like, a producer and making beats and doing tracks and stuff like that, that might be a really good avenue. And those are also, at least Logic is very affordable to just get all of that stuff for a couple $100. And it's a one-time payment. So as far as budget goes, that's a big consideration. I'm using Luna. I started using this probably a month ago. I think I downloaded it when they released it. It's brand new, and you can only use it if you have a Mac. So sorry if you're not on a Mac. And you also have to have an Apollo X. So for that very small group of people, you can get Luna for free, and it's brand new. So they're still working out some of the kinks, but I personally, for the work that I do, it works really well. And I like not paying $30 a month for it. That is a really nice thing to not do.
Yeah. So number 8, we have a MIDI controller, which, again, no matter what you're doing, is a really good thing to have in the studio for the flow of creativity. But how have you used yours in your space?
It speeds things up a bit, having one, and then it also makes things more fun. And if you're creating music, even silly things like starting off a new song and you find the tempo and you're laying down scratch tracks to a click. If you got a MIDI controller, you can do a quick, 1-3 beat, and then you can record your scratch track to a kick and a snare, and it's just like, I know very little about a lot of things. So I like to be able to just grab like a low register, root notes of a chord, and then the 3 or 4 chords that I know, and then use my drumming brain to sort of hodgepodge some sort of idea together. And having a controller is so, it's helpful for sort of like getting the ball rolling on ideas. If you're sort of at a point where you're like, what would it sound like if we had, a Wurlitzer on this, or we had some strings on that, or whatever. Or if you're programming stuff, or, doing drums, like there's so many ways to integrate the controller now, especially if you're like into synths and you learn how to actually use the controller. Like you can get really weird with a lot of the different programs out there, which is super cool and way over my head. But starting out, even if you get a cheap, 12 key or whatever small controller, it can just really help make the process a little more fun and like get like some ideas going a lot more easily than if you were just using your mouse. And they also look cool.
They do look cool. I think these colors are
having a place that looks cool and having some fun colors, man, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So number 9 is something that you mentioned earlier that you put a lot of time and budget into, which is the acoustic treatment, which as a studio monitor company, we always urge people to put just as much time and energy into that as they do their studio monitors. But how have you seen from your first studio to this one, how important it is, and how that's kind of changed your space?
Yeah, so it's a very confusing journey for sure. Sometimes like the solutions can be counterintuitive to what you think they would be. It's also not super fun, which is, as musicians and music creators, we're kind of like, acoustic treatment, what? Do I really need that? But it makes such a monumental difference. I've gone through journeys like making just panels. I've, stapled carpets to walls. I've had like the RLX stuff. I've done it all. And really just, it's going to 100% depend on the room you're in, where you're sitting in the room, what speakers you're using, and all of these different things. So there's a lot of great resources online. I'm sure you guys have some stuff.
We got a couple of videos on it. Yeah.
I actually lifted my design from one of my like all-time favorite producers, Eric Valentine. He has a small channel which nobody knows about, but he gives away all of his secrets on it. It's called Making Records with Eric Valentine. Shout out to him. He did a long 2+ hour video where he talked about control rooms and acoustic treatment and his experience building his first studio in Northern California, and then buying and redoing Barefoot Studios in Hollywood. And it's such a helpful video. It was for me. And then he recently built a studio in Topanga Canyon, and that's the design that I stole. Was basically the exact, because he has a very similarly sized room. It's not huge. And I basically just put acoustic treatment on every single part that I could. There's like some of the ceiling is still showing, and the floor is pretty exposed, but all of the walls are just pure insulation. And he's not the only person who told me that. Spike Stent, who by the way has like 9 songs on the top 10 on the Billboard right now, he told me before I went to build my first home studio, make it dead. And I thought he was joking. He wasn't joking. Turns out having a super dead room is like a really optimal for a great listening experience. And when you're treating your room, like you're really treating the listening position. Like there's not going to be this experience like right here or back there or over there. Like you're looking to have the most accurate and pleasing, transparent listening experience where you're sitting while you're working and mixing, so that you know what's going on. And then, you know, that's the most important thing. And then outside of that, you know, it kind of doesn't really matter. But looking into that, doing a little bit of, at the very least, YouTubing on that topic it's gonna save you so much time and money and annoyances and headaches of like, I thought it sounded good and it doesn't sound good. And it's because everything's bouncing around and getting weird. Definitely an underrated and not sexy topic, but very, very worth it, and probably like one of the top most important things in my book, for sure.
So we're to number 10, which is arguably one of the most vital pieces in your studio and many others, which is the coffee maker. And why is that so important?
Yeah, I would say in considering what are you going to be using the most in a studio? Every studio I've worked at, and including this one, the thing that is used the most is the coffee machine. Now, if you're not a coffee drinker, it doesn't matter. You still need a coffee machine because the rest of the world does drink coffee. And when you have somebody come over to your studio, that's when you say, "Can I get you a coffee?" And people go, "I know coffee. Yes, I love coffee." And then they want to sit down and they want to stay, and then they're comfortable and having fun, and you get that, you throw some sugar in there and then everybody's happy, you know? So I think coffee makers, as silly as it sounds, are sometimes like one of the most important things to the experience of the guests. At East West, they have 6 studios, and that coffee machine would have lines at it. And we would have to have backup coffee machines because that's clearly where there's the most demand. And it's like, you got to have a good system. You got to have cups. You got to have stirs, creamers. I got a little mini fridge back there. So joking a little bit, there's a little bit of me joking, but if I have a studio, there better be a coffee machine and there better be backup coffee and maybe some waters and some teas, if you have those kind of people around.
The water and tea people.
Who drinks water?
Well, I think that is just about everything.
Yeah.
We have gone through 10 items. I think this is a really good starting place for people that are looking to kind of outfit an extra room in their house or whatever it might be. And I am sure we missed some things. And if we did, please leave them in the comments below to let other people know what you think is some of the most crucial pieces of gear in the studio. Thank you, Andrew, for helping us out with this video.
Thanks for having me.
And for showing us around your awesome studio.
I appreciate it.
Again, please check out his channel below for fantastic content and how he built this place. So
yeah, I do a lot of videos about home studios because I spend all of my time in them. So this is my favorite thing to talk about.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.